Welcome to an episode of Link, the show that explores the connections between the games we love and the life we live in. This is the show where we dive into the depths of psychology, philosophy, and many other systems to not only say but show how games are important.
Oh, and as an aside, these shows aren't going to be all about the Zelda franchise. In this case, that's mostly a coincidence. Mostly. I was actually not planning on making my first video in the Link series Zelda related, but as I was working on expanding my notes on several different games and their potential themes, this theme just seemed to be the most exciting. That I'm going to be tackling a theme that runs through both games simultaneously, then relating it back to real life. So more accurately, this is a video about the connection between Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask rather than an analysis of either individually. And what is this theme? I'm glad you asked. The said theme is, probably not surprisingly, time. There's some powerful lessons about how our perspective on time affects our ability to live our lives to their fullest potential. Before we dive into the meat of it, I'd like to pose some questions. Why does Link have so many regrets after the events of Ocarina of Time? Why does Majora's Mask feel more powerful thematically? And why is Ocarina of Time so exciting, and why is Majora's Mask so messy and unsettling? And really, what can these two gems possibly teach us about our real lives? First off, let's take a look at the Triforce. The trifecta represents two main concepts in the Nintendo 64 Zelda games. First, they represent the three goddesses, Din, Nehru, and Faeror. And second, they more practically represent the individual powers that each goddess represents, namely wisdom, courage, and power, which themes, of course, apply to Zelda, Link, and Ganondorf respectively. I'm going to be adding to this model in a bit, but for now, that's enough. The very start of Ocarina of Time sets the theme for the rest of the game nearly perfectly. Check out this nightmare sequence. Everything about this scene is foreboding and terrifying, and even more specifically, it's a prophetic vision. A vision of something that could happen in the future. This drawbridge lowering from the massive castle walls is abrupt and loud and powerful, juxtaposed with Link, who is a tiny and insignificant spot of color beneath the gray, angry lightning of dark clouds. Nightmares. What emotions do nightmares conjure up? Fear. But specifically in this case, fear of the future. And what do we call fear of the future? Well, looking up the definition, it's dread. Dread is the fear related to the future and the unknown. Looking at the Triforce, I'm going to give the Triforce a little bit more meaning within the mythos of the Nintendo 64 game specifically. This Triforce I'm going to label as future. Future because it's on the right, like a timeline. Yeah. Anyway. And as a subcategory to that, let's jot down that it's also about dread, since dread is specifically a future-related emotion. Okay, going back to the game, immediately after the events of the nightmare, we're abruptly brought into the light-hearted world of the Kokiri. Dread to the simple and peaceful. Everything is so calm suddenly. And in fact, the Kokiri represent the next part of our Triforce, the present time. So we've got future and present. The Kokiri have no fear of the future, nor do they even have much of a history. I mean, the woods have history, but the Kokiri don't. They don't grow up, they don't leave the woods, or even seem to do anything but just straight up exist. Little innocent children that simply hang around doing pretty much nothing. So this Triforce represents living in the present. As an interesting aside, it makes sense that Link would be living the simple life of the Kokiri up to this point, because before you, the player, come to control him, he wouldn't have any reason to, do anything different. Games inherently focus on the present time. Link, like you in real life, does not live in the future or the past, he lives in the right now, and the momentary sliver of time we can perceive. But let's be honest here, just living in the present is a potentially boring place to be. Imagine jumping in and playing the fictional game Ocarina of Time Kokiri Meadow Simulator, where you live the everyday life of a supposed Kokiri. Imagine just running around the Kokiri Meadow for the entirety of the game. Or even better yet, imagine doing exactly what the rest of the Kokiri do. Namely, stand around with your fairy, probably being surprised if, or when, some other Kokiri steps over and chats with you. Mido would keep you away from the great Deku Tree. You'd be frightened of the woods and the danger held within. Maybe you'd be lucky enough to try and pull a weed from the ground for eternity. Yeah, that sounds pretty fun to me. So, we have a name for such a life. This is called idleness. and is actually a second subcategory for the present Triforce. Or Time Force? Trime Force? I mean, slowing down and taking a break is healthy, but prolonged idleness is boring and results in pretty much nothing happening. So what, happens to pull Link out of this state of idleness? Well, Navi and the Deku Tree happen. Boy, is she good at pulling you out of idleness.
Hey, listen!
Navi, on errand from the Deku Tree, comes and tells Link that something needs to happen. In this specific case, it's that the tree wants to talk to him. But more generally, it's this event that changes his life's course from living a life of perpetual innocence and idleness into a life of action. Yes, action. Action is diametrically opposed to idleness, but is still something that only dwells in the present time. So we see that the present Triforce has more than one subcategory associated with it. It has two sides of the same coin, one positive, action, and one negative, idleness. As we'll see in a bit, this choice Link has between action and idleness is not only the only choice we as players actually have control over in these games, but also applies to real life. So the switch flips from idleness to action, and I'd posit that this is when Link officially no longer fits in with his adopted Kokiri family. Action has him challenging the social customs of his little meadow, and brings him to the Deku Tree. Yes, the Deku Tree that not only has foreboding news about the finality of his own life, but also about the potential finality of the rest of Hyrule. What he talks about relates directly with the nightmare from the opening scene. This dread has resurfaced. And here's the most important part. Well, before, the emotion of the nightmare was very acutely dread. Now it's not quite as scary. We certainly know more about the future, but it's still kind of vague and unknown, so it should kind of have that dread. But the real difference is that Link is no longer a passive actor. He's doing something about it. Even if he has no idea what's going to come from his doings. So the implication here is that Link, by taking action, by flipping that idleness action switch, he's very literally dispelled the fear of the unknown, turning it into potential for something better. No longer is that nightmare necessarily prophetic, but something that can potentially be defied. Think about this for a minute. Link is stuck in a cycle of nightmares that cause perpetual low-level dread, and the only thing that he needed to do to dispel that dread was to take action towards a better potential future. Potential. So let's update our Triforce model. Not only does the present piece have two sides of the same coin, idleness and action, but so does the future piece. Now it has both dread and, yes, potential. Dread is what surfaces when we don't have any control of the future, and potential is what surfaces when we switch from idleness to action. These two pieces are inseparably connected. Present affects the future, or at least our perception of it. And here's where the remainder of the game lies, vacillating between the two polar opposites of dread and potential, based entirely on how much action or idleness you as a player are exerting on the world around you. So you meet Zelda and Ganondorf for the first time. He looks at you guys, bam, dread. Zelda sends you to find the next two stones. You're now opposing the threat, so it equals potential. Acted upon, dread. Next plot point, potential. As adult Link, this is pushed over and over again. Demolished town, Dark Kokiri, dread. Forest temple, fire temple, potential. New item, new song, new plot point, all of it propelling Link onward. This perpetual cycle of moving forward, pushing harder and faster to the end goal. Out of necessity, Link must stop Ganondorf at all costs. Fate this, fate that. It's just too obvious what the costs of not defeating Ganondorf are at this point. Even this haunting vision of the burnt Hyrule market is not set in stone, because if Ganondorf can be stopped, then the terrifying potential future can be completely altered. Yes, this all comes to a satisfying and glorious close in the all-time high of Link defeating Ganon and going back in time to live his childhood in absolute peace and serenity. The high could not be more satisfying. Link will go back to the Kokiri forest and... wait. Link will go back to the Kokiri forest and do what exactly? Just step back into the life he used to live? He's just going to go back to his treehouse, living there without a fairy once more? Or maybe he could go and hang out with Zelda. Yeah. that princess of Hyrule that doesn't even know who he is. Or he could go live on Lon Lon Ranch with the girl his own age that has a horse that he doesn't even get to claim as his own anymore. No, the truth is that Link doesn't really belong anywhere. But he just saved the world. Why then does it seem more, I guess, real to us that he's not happy? Where did he go wrong?
And with that cliffhanger, you'll just have to wait until part 2 to see what is actually wrong with Link's almost complete perspective on time. I'll just leave this image right here for your eyes to feast on. Yeah, that's Link looking sad. Like, really sad. It's clear from his body language that his Ocarina of Time escapades were well worth it emotionally. So, to be continued? Man, I've always wanted to say that unironically. Join us next time to see the exciting conclusion of Link's N64 journey through time as we dive deep into the messy, lonely, and heavy world of Majora's Mask. Click this scribble to watch it now. As always, thanks so much for watching, and thanks for helping me show rather than just say that games are important. Click this enticing subscribe button to be alerted whenever I do a thing on the YouTubes. Of course, like it as well so YouTube knows that this video is worth spreading to your fellow intelligent gamers. If you'd share it with your buddies and your mom, I'd figuratively kiss your feet. So, you know, do the Facebook, Twitter, and email thing with it. Lastly, and most importantly, these videos are literally only possible via your donation on patreon.com. All of my videos will always be free, but with your patronage, it guarantees more of these can actually get made. Literally every subject or game I make a video for is voted in by Patreon supporters. So do a little Patreon action to get in on that voting action. You're paying for it, so I want to make sure you're getting what you want out of it. Y'all are the reason I put the insane amount of time into each video I make.